Joan Blaeu produced the copper plates for these maps nearly 4 centuries ago, as his home country, the Netherlands, had risen to the peak of European power as a result of trade in Asia. At the heart of this trade was the chief cartographer or information officer who controlled the flow of maps and recorded discoveries jealously guarded from rivals. Rather than being secretive, however, Joan used the rich cartographic resources constantly pouring in from Asia and elsewhere in a variety of his commercial undertakings, including these Great Wall maps. For Blaeu, bigger was better, and he produced wall maps as prestige items for those who could afford them. They were meant to be enjoyed and admired, and they were, and that's why so few of them have survived today. The Australian map is particularly significant for us. It shows New Holland, or Australia as we know it, but minus its east coast, and it remained the template for our view of Australia, or the past, until the 1770s when Cook added the east coast and completed the map.
The conservation treatment of these two wall maps was complicated by the fact that they're composite objects, so they had timber components and textile components and paper and printed components, and all of these required conservation treatment by people with different areas of expertise. The textile components consisted of 3 things. There's a linen lining to the map, there's also a silk fringe, and there were 2 remaining silk tassels with a little bit of cordage, which appears to be part of an original hanging system. We had 2 textile conservators who reinstated the physical integrity of the linen that lines the map itself, but they also recreated the original tassels and cordage, and this was done by dyeing silk to 2 different colours to match the original, which was then braided, matching the original configuration of the braid. The original tassels were unfortunately too fragile to be returned to display.
In order to prepare the surface of the maps for subsequent conservation treatment, we first had to undertake a dry surface clean overall. Unfortunately, due to the state of the maps having been on display for hundreds of years on a wall, this wasn't enough, and there was still a lot of dirt remaining on the surface. So in order for us to remove that extra layer of dirt, we used graded agarose gel blocks, which we worked across the surface using soft brushes, and this allowed us to introduce a small bit of moisture to the surface of the map and loosen some of that ingrained dirt.
When we were washing these maps, we were washing them with gels, and the gels contained water, and we had to be very careful because the coastline areas and some of the cartouche areas have a copper-based pigment in them called verdigris, and if we got any moisture on the copper, we risk causing a corrosion process to start, which would not only discolour the pigment itself, but would also damage the paper in time. So it would eat away at the paper. So what we did to resolve that problem is we masked those areas using a chemical called cyclododecane, which we were able to paint on to those areas, and that effectively sealed the pigment from the moisture within the gels. After the washing was completed and we'd removed the gel, the cyclododecane sublimates off over the course of a few weeks and leaves no trace behind.
When the maps first arrived, they were heavily soiled and the paper was degraded and cracking and curling up at the edges, and there were lots of fragments that we'd collected that had fallen off during travel. So using the fonts that was printed on the fragments, we could locate which side of the map it had come from, and then from there we could find the exact location from the fragment and reattach it to the map. In the end, this project ended up being like reattaching pieces of a jigsaw puzzle back onto the map.